And what we're going to do is I'm going to chat for a little bit. We have some local folks, a panel, who are going to come up and give us their perspective, and then we want to have a serious discussion with you. What I want to do is just very briefly tell you a little bit about myself. I want to give you an assessment of where I think we are as a nation. And then I want to talk about what's going on politically in this country and suggest to you where we might want to go. And I have the panelists, and then I want you to tell me what you think. I am the longest serving independent in the history of the United States of America in terms of being in Congress. And whenever people ask you, well, why are you an independent? Is that because you want? Is that because you want to be somewhere between the Democrats and the Republicans? That is not the answer. I was first elected. I started my political career defeating a long-term Democratic incumbent mayor in Burlington, Vermont. Burlington is the largest city in the state of Vermont. And I defeated him by 10 votes after a recount. And one of the proudest accomplishments that I've ever had in my life is that 2 years, we have elections in Burlington every 2 years. 2 years later, when I won.
You're being bugged by the Tea Party.
2 years later, we doubled the voter turnout. And the lesson that I learned then, that I've never forgotten, is if you respond to the needs of people, especially working people and lower income people, they will get involved in the political process. I think one of the reasons we are where we are as a nation right now is that people have lost faith in government, they've lost faith in politics, they've lost faith in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And if you ask me why I'm an independent, the answer is, I'm going to get into this in some less. I caucus with the Democrats and work very closely with progressive Democrats, but by and large, I think it would be hard to say that most Americans believe that the Democratic Party is the party of working Americans. Both political parties are heavily influenced by big money, and I think that people are in trouble and they don't see anybody speaking up for them. And the answer is they don't vote, or they vote on some tangential issues. All right, let me just talk a little bit about what's going on in the country, and I'll tell you things that I suspect nobody else in the United States Senate will tell you. And in one sense, what is going on is that despite a huge increase in recent years in productivity, in technology, which should make our nation a wealthier nation, despite that, what is going on is that the middle class is disappearing. Today, we have 46.5 million Americans living in poverty, which is the highest number in the history of the United States. We have tens of millions of people working longer hours for lower wages. There's a study that just came out recently from the Census Bureau, which told us that median family income, that family right in the middle of American society, has less income today than they did 24 years ago. So people are working incredibly hard. In my state of Vermont, people are working not one job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. I suspect the story is the same here, and yet they're finding themselves worse off than they were before. I want to bore you for a moment. I have bore you with some statistics. All right. The typical middle-class family has seen its income go down by more than $5,000 since 1999. You want to know why people are angry? You want to know why people are furious? Because they're working harder and they're making less and they're worrying about their kids. Now listen to this one. Average male men, workers, made $283 less last year than they did 44 years ago. So when you talk about the economic problems, the working class, people who have not gone to college are getting decimated, absolutely decimated. Average female workers earned $1,700 less last year than they did in 2007. In the United States, and again, we don't talk about this, we have by far the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major nation on earth. 22% of our kids are living in poverty. When we talk about the economy and you talk about unemployment, I know when you look at the newspapers, you think that unemployment is 7.4%. I don't know what it is in Alabama. But unemployment nationally is not 7.4% because those statistics do not include people who have given up looking for work and people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. You throw those numbers in, and you know what real unemployment in this country is? Double. It's close to 14%, almost double. Youth unemployment, kids leaving high school trying to get a job, unemployment phenomenally high. We're talking about 20%. African American youth unemployment off the charts, over 40%. So that is what's going on for working families in this country. But there is another phenomenon that is also going on, and that is that while poverty is going up and the middle class is disappearing, the people on top have never had it so good. Just again, a couple of statistics to bore you with. Statistics, by the way, that we don't talk about terribly much in this country. You all know what I mean when I talk about distribution of wealth. Right? Not a lot of concept. Who gets wealth? Well, wealth is what we have accumulated in our lifetime, not what we made last year. In terms of wealth, the top 1% in this country owns 38% of the wealth of America. Question you. What does the bottom 60% own? Who said that?
I saw you on the Al Jazeera.
Oh, you're cheating, all right. 2.3%. Got that? In terms of wealth, after a lifetime, what wealth is what you have today, and some of you have been working for 30 years. Bottom 60% owns 2.3% of the wealth in America. The top 1% owns 38%. One family, the Walton family. I gather you have some Walmarts around here. One family owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of American society. There are six. Walton had 6 kids. And those 6 kids are worth something like $100 billion altogether. Our good friends, the Koch brothers, who are busy trying to make sure that Americans don't have health insurance. We don't expand health insurance to the uninsured, are worth $71 billion. That's wealth. In terms of income, which is what you made last year, this is an equally unbelievable statistic. And that is that in the last 3 years, 95% of all new income generated in America went to the top 1%. 95% of all new income went to the top 1%.
It's obviously.
It isn't. And the gap, therefore, between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider. Now, let me talk a little bit about that is kind of a broad overview of what's going on economically in America. Unemployment incredibly high, real wages going down for many American workers. I remember, you all remember, 20, 30 years ago, in terms of blue-collar jobs, if you worked in Detroit, you worked in the automobile manufacturing area, we were making $25, $28 an hour. That was the gold standard for manufacturing in America. Workers were making good wages. Now, we talked recently and seen on TV how manufacturing is resurfacing, but creating new manufacturing jobs, that's a good thing. But many of you don't know that many of those new manufacturing jobs are paying 50% less than the old manufacturing jobs. And that has a lot to do with unfettered free trade. Because what corporate America and the big money interests have always wanted is to make the American worker competitive with the Chinese worker, the Mexican worker. So in the last 10 years, we have seen the loss in this country of over 50,000 manufacturing facilities, factories. 50,000. Not all of that is attributable to unfettered free trade, but a lot of it is. And that is millions of decent paying jobs. So without a manufacturing base and without a trade union movement where people could work, wasn't a glamorous job, wasn't a sexy job, but you could make a strong middle class income. You had health care, you had a pension program. When all of that's gone, where does a high school kid go out and get a job? We just found in Philadelphia, Mississippi earlier today. And you know where the kids are working?
Mickey D.
That's right. They're working at the fast food places for $7.25 an hour. Right? So that's what's going on, in my view, economically in the country. Now I want to talk a little bit about politically and how that impacts on politics. We recently discovered an interesting document. It was, if my memory is correct, it was the 1956 Republican Party platform in which Dwight D. Eisenhower was running for re-election. It was really remarkable. Eisenhower, in 1956, was taking credit for expanding Social Security, for raising the minimum wage, for having a program which would be today a Democratic program. That's what it was. In the last 50 years, and most recently in the last 10, 15 years, the Republican Party has moved from being what we call a center-right party to a right-wing extremist party. People like Dwight David Eisenhower and many of the senators who came from the state of Vermont would no longer find a home in the Republican Party at all. They could not join the Republican Party. Now, you all have followed what's been going on in Washington in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I got here late today, I missed my plane because I was voting at 7 o'clock in the evening to reopen the United States government and not default on our bills. Right now, you have, the focus was on Obamacare and the goal of the Tea Party folks to repeal Obamacare. But what I want all of you to understand, it's very important that you do, is that is just the tip of the iceberg of where these guys are coming from. We came across a document, which is, you can all find it. It's the 2012 Republican Party platform of Texas. And the reason we use that, Texas is a very large state, it's an influential state. And often, the ideology that comes out of Texas ends up spreading throughout the Republican rank and file. And this is what they believe. What they believe is they want to phase out, not tomorrow, they want to phase out Social Security. Because they don't believe, and this is important that you understand this, their worldview is the government is awful. And if you need retirement security when you're 65 or 70, you should have saved for it, or you can invest on Wall Street in the stock market. That's their view. But that the government should not be involved in retirement security and Social Security. 2 years ago, some of you may be familiar with the budget brought forth by Paul Ryan, the former vice presidential candidate, the chairman of the House Budget Committee. And what Ryan proposed is to end Medicare as we know it and convert it into a voucher program. What does that mean? It means that you give somebody who is 65 or 67 or whatever, you give them a check. I think the check was going to be for $8,000. And they can use that check any way they want. Now, if you are diagnosed at the age of 67 or 70 with cancer, tell me how many days that $8,000 check is going to pilfer. One day, your first exam, right. And after that, hey, you're on your own. These guys are paying something else that people know. We're fighting right now, some of us, to raise the minimum wage. Minimum wage in Alabama is what, $7.25 an hour? In Vermont, we have done a bit better. We're at $8.60. There are some states, California, to its credit, just raised the minimum wage to $10 an hour. All right? So we are trying to raise the minimum wage to at least $10 an hour. That's what some of us are trying to do. And the reason for that is that most of the new jobs being created in America are part-time jobs without benefits and they're low-wage jobs. That's one of the crises in America. You got a lot of people who are working 40, 50 hours a week. They're not going anyplace in a hurry because they don't have jobs that pay them anywhere near a living wage. What is the Republican position? You might say, well, okay, probably the Republicans are opposed to raising the minimum wage.
They don't even want to.
No.
Eliminate it.
Their position is they want to abolish the concept of the minimum wage. Now, all of this has to do with a very weird ideology on their part, which suggests because they hate government, and if you have Social Security, or Medicare, or Medicaid, or a minimum wage, or federal aid to education, this is making us an unfree society. That's their ideology. So if I am an employer, and you are in a rural or urban, high unemployment area, and I say to you, Mary, I have a job for you at $4 an hour. And you can take it or leave it because you don't want to suspect there's somebody else who will take it. That's freedom. Because we don't have the government intervening and saying you have to pay at least a certain sum. So my point here is to understand that this right-wing stuff goes a lot further than the hatred of Obama. It goes a lot further than their wanting to repeal Obamacare. Now, what are they afraid about? Now, I should tell you up front, I voted for the Affordable Care Act because I thought expanding health insurance to tens of millions more Americans was the right thing to do. Other provisions in it that I like. One of the things that I work very hard on is getting $12 billion into community health centers all over this country, which are providing very good quality, affordable health care. But I want to tell you up front, I believe that the Affordable Care Act is a step forward, but it doesn't go far enough. And that we should join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to every man, woman, child, and adult. Here is the point that you all have to understand when we talk about health care. And I don't know how often it's talked about here in Alabama, but it needs to be talked about. Not only is the United States of America the only nation in the industrialized world not to guarantee health care to all people, we are spending almost twice as much per person on health care as the people of any other nation. We had, a number of months ago, the ambassador from Denmark, small country, Scandinavia, came to Vermont. They are spending about 50% per person of what we spend on health care. And in Denmark, you know what? People go to the doctor's office. I don't even know if they have a card. They don't take their wallet out. They don't fill in any forms. They go to the doctor when they want it. You know how much it costs them? Zero. They go to the hospital when they have to go. Costs them zero. Because it is a publicly funded program, as are the programs of virtually every other major country on earth. So not only today do we have 48 million people with no health insurance, do we have tens of millions more who have high deductibles and co-payments. Not only are our health care outcomes, how we do in terms of life expectancy and the treatment of various illnesses, worse than many other countries, but we end up for all of that paying almost twice as much per person. And the reason for that is our current healthcare system is not designed to provide the best quality care in the most cost-effective way. It is designed to make as much money as possible for the private insurance companies and for the drug companies. So I voted for the Affordable Care Act, but we have got to go a lot further. But here's what the opposition to the Affordable Care Act, this is what it is. They're not worried that it may fail. They are staying up nights worrying that it may succeed. They're absolutely worried. Now, I think here in Alabama, your governor has not expanded Medicaid. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why do you think that is? And why do you think in many Republican states that's not the case? Because of millions of people are able to get health insurance. What are they going to say? They say, you know what? Democracy actually works. Government may be a good thing. I want to thank the government, my government, for helping me and my kids get the health insurance that we need. And you know what? Maybe I'm going to get involved in the political process. Maybe it makes a difference who's elected or who's not elected. That's what they are afraid. That's what they are afraid. So that's the Republican Party, which has become, over the years, a truly extremist party. And then on top of all of that, you have this phenomenon called Citizens United. And most of you know what Citizens United is?
Oh, yeah.
Citizens United is this horrendous, unbelievably bad Supreme Court decision, which basically says to billionaires they can spend as much money as they want on the political process, doing it quote-unquote independently, flooding the airwaves with negative 30-second ads, etc., etc. Spend as much as they want. Folks like the Koch brothers or Sheldon Adelson spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on elections, not to mention spending all kinds of money setting up groups like the Tea Party, etc., etc. I know a lot of folks out there, working class people, are part of the Tea Party. No one has told them that the people who founded the Tea Party are billionaires.
All right.
Got to tell them, and our job is to tell them that.
Yeah.
So that's what you got with the Republicans. Now, what do you have with the Democratic Party? With the Democratic Party, you have some really great people there who are trying their best, working really hard. But in general, you have a party that is also, to a certain degree, moved to the right. Not anywhere near like the Republicans, of course. But they have become, they used to be, 40 or 50 years ago under FDR, under Harry Truman, most people would say the Democratic Party was the party of the working class of America. If you read Harry Truman, when he ran for re-election, when he took over after Roosevelt died, he was considered to be a conservative Democrat. And many of the liberals of the time were really worried about Truman. He came from Missouri. He was kind of conservative, small-town guy. If you read his speeches attacking big money interests, there are very few Democrats who give that speech today, almost none. And he was considered to be a conservative Democrat. So what's happened is the role of money. What do you think many people do? They've got to go out and raise money. Where do you get money from? From wealthy people, from corporate interests. So the Democrats have become more conservative than they should be. And then you have, in the midst of all of that, the average person saying, I'm working longer hours for lower wages. My job went to China. I can't afford health care. I can't send my kid to college, where my kid is coming out $30,000 in debt. I can't afford child care. I'm really worried. We just had this government shutdown of 1 million federal employees who are not getting a paycheck. And let me tell you, many of them were really, really worried about people live paycheck to paycheck. Is that right? If you don't get a paycheck, maybe you missed the mortgage, maybe you missed the car loan, maybe your credit ratings. No. That's what's going on in America. And what the average American is saying is, who is there speaking to me? We bailed out Wall Street 5 years ago, and now they're making more money. I didn't catch that book. And now they're making more money than they ever did before. They're continuing to pay their CEOs huge amounts of money. So people look around there, many of them are not voting, many are totally cynical about the political process. Right? Now, the issue that interests me, and the reason that I've come here tonight, I'm going to wrap it up in a moment, and I want our panelists to come up here, and then we can open up the discussion. Here's the reason that I'm here. I find it hard to understand, and I need you to educate me on this issue, how it can be that in poor states, Alabama, Mississippi, other states, people continue to vote against their own best interests.
The South never got over the Civil War.
I was astounded. Here's just a fact. We learned that in the last election in Mississippi, where Obama actually didn't do all that bad, I think he got close to 45% of the votes, with very little support from the National Democrats. He got virtually all of the African American vote. You know what percentage of the white vote he got in Mississippi? 10%. And in Alabama, it was a little bit higher than that. I think it was in the last election, maybe 15%. Now, I can understand if some millionaire or billionaire wants to vote to see his taxes go down, wants the freedom to pollute our air and our water, wants to send people's jobs to China and get it easier to do that. I can understand all that. If greedy millionaires and billionaires, are only interested in making more money for themselves, I can understand them voting for right-wing Republicans. But I'll be damned if I can understand how a working class person trying to get by on $30,000, $40,000 a year, whose kids may not have health insurance, who have no idea about how they're going to be able to send their kid to college. I just have a hard time why they vote for people who are at war with them.
It's the social issue.
So now, let me throw out why I think the answer is, but we'll talk about it. I'm going to end in a minute. I want our panel to come up, but I think here's what it is. Back in the 50s, when segregation was alive and well, you know who were the lowest paid white workers in America? Who were they? People in Mississippi and Alabama. They were the lowest paid white workers in America. What did they have going for them? They had the quote-unquote ability to drink out of a fountain that a black worker could, right? That was their great thing. You think? I'm maybe not making any money. I may be the lowest paid white worker in America, but I got something. I could go to this bathroom, or I could drink out of this water fountain, and black people can't. Woo! I am really on top of what more can I get in life? There's somebody underneath me. Well, segregation thing on, more or less, coming on. But then there were other issues. And these folks that were opposing, they're not dumb people. I should know that. They spend huge amounts of money. Think of these things. They do build up with focus groups on. They just test it. So this is what they say. They go to somebody and they say, what do you think about gay marriage? Oh, God, I hate gay marriage. Now, my state, I got to tell you, we were the first state in the country to make gay marriage legal. Or, what do you think about the issue of women's rights and abortion? What do you think about President Obama wanting to take away every gun in America? Et cetera, et cetera. So what they do is they deflect the attention of people away from those issues which really impact their lives. And that is whether they're going to earn decent wages, whether they're going to have dignity on the job, whether their kids can go to college, whether they're going to have health care. Life is difficult. No one has come up with a solution for all of the problems. But what we do know is that people have a decent job, decent benefits, and they don't have to struggle every day. They're going to be doing a little bit better than some other people who are not. What these guys have thought is, let's throw out this issue, let's throw out that issue, and let's throw out this issue. And a lot of people are succumbing to it. So you have people who are voting on guns, people who are voting on abortion. People can have honest, I'm sure there are people in this room who have differences with them. I happen to be pro-choice, I've always been pro-choice. That's my view. Right? I have friends who have different points of view, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. People can disagree. But where we have got to come together is to not allow race to divide us, not allow gender to divide us, not allow any of these other issues to divide us. But people sometimes get confused about it. Because I love my wife very much. We've been married for 25 years. You know what? We have an argument every day about one thing or another. Now, maybe your marriage is better than mine. I doubt it. That's what happens in life. In this room, people disagree with each other. But what you don't want to do is, because you disagree on one issue, is to vote for somebody who's working against you on 10 different issues. And what we need to do, and it takes a lot of work, and you know, I come from Vermont, and that's an easier place in many ways than it is in Alabama. You have a harder job than we do. We've dealt with other issues. But what we need to do is to say, look, let's disagree on abortion, fine. You disagree on gay marriage, fine. You disagree on gun control, fine. But what about making sure that your kid and every kid in the state of Alabama has health insurance? What about making sure that the federal government helps us create the millions and millions of jobs we desperately need? Now, I don't know about Alabama, but I can tell you that in my state of Vermont, our infrastructure is in very bad shape. We have bridges that have been neglected for years. We have roads that are in bad shape. We have water systems. We have wastewater plants. We have a rail system that needs to be rebuilt. We have an enormous amount of work to do. And when we put money in that, we can, in fact, create millions of jobs. Now, I know in Alabama it may not be generally believed, but I have the bad news to tell you that global warming is real. Okay? That's what the scientific community is telling us. I'm on that page. We hear from you guys every single day. And they say today there are problems all over the country, in the world, in terms of floods, in terms of extreme weather disturbances, in terms of droughts. And what they say is if we do not get our act together as a planet, not just the United States, the situation will only become worse. How about investing heavily in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy? We do that, we can create substantial numbers of jobs. If we had a national health care system guaranteeing health care to all people, it would not only be the moral thing to do, but you take the burden of small and medium-sized businesses who are now spending too much money on health care. So what we need to do is to come up with an agenda. People will disagree, but the main thing is to make sure that our friends and our neighbors do not get tricked into voting against themselves. So that is my message. We're going to have a discussion in a minute, and I want to bring Jay back up here to introduce our panelists. Thank you all very much.